It's a world-famous urban wonder, built on a lagoon, and a city desperate to stay afloat under the pressure of mass tourism. Venice has long welcomed the flood of visitors that comes to its shores, but the passage of time and the crowds have taken their toll. In a bid to control the damage to this UNESCO World Heritage Site, a solution in the form of an entrance fee, a little more than $5 to stem the tide of tourists.
The system is very important because we are finding a new balance between the residents, the community and the day trippers.
Anyone wanting to pay a visit to the floating city on certain busy days will need to download a QR code. Total numbers will be limited. Reservations are meant to be made online, but there are booths for those who don't have a smartphone. If you live, work or study in Venice, you don't need to pay. Nor do those who have hotel reservations or who are aged under 14. Inspectors patrolling the main entrance points of the city are on the lookout for those who've avoided paying the fee, risking a fine between $50 and $300. And it hasn't gone down well with some tourists.
To deprive a person on a low budget to come here for an hour or two and enjoy this city is surely a shame.
Tourists are already paying to come to the country, to visit the city, and to stay in the city you also need to pay. I don't think it's fair.
Venice itself has only 50,000 residents, but it welcomes 30 million visitors a year. 2/3 of them come just for the day. The effects that tourism has on the city has long been a source of frustration for its inhabitants. Cruise ships were banned after one collided into a dock, a relief for those who had been campaigning for years over the damage they caused to the lagoon. Venice also narrowly avoided being put on the UNESCO World Heritage in Danger List, as the UN body said the city was addressing the problems of mass tourism. Other tourist destinations will be looking closely at the scheme. If it's a success, it could be replicated elsewhere. But when a cappuccino at Venice's famous Florian Cafe can set you back $13, it might not dissuade too many from visiting. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera.
All right, well, Jane DeMosto is a co-founder and member of We Are Here Venice. That's an NGO whose mission is for Venice to remain a living city. She joins us, unsurprisingly perhaps, from Venice. A warm welcome to you. So I'm sure many of us have paid things like tourist tax when checking into hotels in places like Amsterdam, Paris or Barcelona. What's the difference here?
This is a system that's trying to intercept people that are coming to visit Venice without taking accommodation in Venice or maybe staying in unregulated tourist apartments. So it's a tax on day trippers who come to Venice.
So you're essentially saying there are other ways to potentially raise money that would have a greater impact?
My point of view comes from talking to a very personal point of view. My son's girlfriend has been given a job. She's a student and she's been given the job of being a tax ticket controller for the visitors. And I look at her and I think there's so much better things that the Venice municipality, the Venice government could do with the time of a person like her. She could be trained to be a museum guide or a visitor enhancement person for people who come to Venice. And then more people would buy tickets to the museums and they'd enjoy the real culture of Venice rather than buying a ticket and then trying to save on the food that they might need while they're here.
Right. It's my understanding that given the footfall, the sheer numbers that are passing through such an important historical centre as Venice, that something potentially needs to be done to limit numbers and paying $5, timing entrance.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would be the first to say Venice needs to limit the numbers of people. But I can't imagine that this quite complicated to execute and questionable instrument, also in terms of individual rights, is the right solution to manage the numbers. They could impose a actual limit on the numbers, and they could also, interestingly, fill Venice with more residents. Venice is a city with no housing policy. If there were more residents here, local businesses wouldn't have to cater to mass tourists. They'd be doing other things, and Venice wouldn't be the type of destination that people come to for just a few hours. Or if they came for just a few hours, they'd be coming with something much more specific in mind than to just walk the streets and buy a canned drink.
And I understand some locals have even described this tax as like paying to get into a theme park. Jane DeMosto joining us from Venice. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.